The glass slipped from my fingers, water splashing across my kitchen counter as Emma grabbed my arm with surprising strength. Her face was covered in attic dust, cobwebs clinging to her dark hair, and her hands were shaking so badly I could feel the tremors through my sleeve. "Emma, sweetheart, slow down. What are you talking about?" I tried to keep my voice calm, but her panic was contagious. "Grandma, I need you to trust me right now. Don't drink anything. Don't wash your hands. Don't even touch the faucet." She was already pulling me toward my bedroom. "Pack a bag. Just essentials. We need to be out of here in 3 minutes." My heart hammered against my ribs. Emma was 23, steady as a rock, a carpenter's apprentice who'd inherited her grandfather's practical nature and calm demeanor. I'd never seen her like this, not when she fell off a roof last year, not when her parents cut her off financially, not ever. "Emma, please. You're scaring me." "Good, you should be scared." She was throwing clothes into my overnight bag with shaking hands. "I was up in the attic checking that leak you mentioned. I found equipment, Grandma. Professional-grade water filtration bypass system, and a reservoir tank hidden behind the insulation." The room tilted slightly. "What kind of reservoir?" "I don't know exactly, but there were warning labels, biohazard symbols. It's been feeding directly into your water supply." Her voice cracked. "Someone installed this, Grandma. Someone with expertise. This wasn't an accident." My mind raced through the possibilities, landing on the one I didn't want to acknowledge. "Your mother and Richard have been here. They insisted on doing maintenance work last spring. Said they wanted to help me keep up the house." Emma's face went hard. "Richard is a chemical engineer. He'd know exactly how to do this. We were out of the house in 4 minutes. Emma wouldn't let me lock the door, said we couldn't touch anything that might have evidence. She drove us to a hotel 15 miles away, checking her rearview mirror constantly like we were in some kind of thriller movie. Except this wasn't fiction. This was my life." We'd been in the hotel room maybe 30 minutes when my phone started ringing. "Catherine, my daughter." Emma grabbed the phone before I could answer. "Don't. Not yet. We need to call the police first, Grandma. Then a lawyer. Then maybe a doctor to test your blood." "A doctor?" "Emma, I feel fine." "How long have you been feeling tired? Having headaches? Any digestive issues?" I opened my mouth to say no, then stopped. The fatigue that had been creeping up on me for months. The nausea I'd attributed to my age. The confusion I'd been worried might be early dementia. "Oh God," I whispered. Emma's expression turned fierce, protective. "We're going to the ER right now. And I'm calling 911 to report what I found." The pounding on my hotel door came an hour later, just as Emma had predicted. Through the peephole, I saw Catherine, my 44-year-old daughter, her face twisted with what looked like genuine concern. Richard stood behind her, his expression harder to read. "Mom, open this door right now." Emma called me hysterical about some nonsense. "Are you okay?" Emma stood beside me, phone in hand, already recording. "Don't open it," she murmured. "The police are on their way. They said not to engage. You're kidnapping her." Catherine shrieked through the door. "Emma, you're mentally unstable." "Mom, if you can hear me, we're calling the police." "Let them," Emma said coldly. "We already did. My name is Margaret Chen, and I'm 68 years old. For 42 years, I built a real estate empire in this city, starting with one small rental property my husband James and I bought when we were barely scraping by. James worked construction hard, honest work that Catherine always seemed embarrassed by. She wanted a father in a suit, not one who came home with drywall dust in his hair. By the time James died 3 years ago, we owned 17 properties across the city, worth roughly $3.2 million. Nobody knew the exact figure except my attorney and my accountant. I'd been careful about that, especially after Catherine married Richard 5 years ago and suddenly became very interested in my retirement plans. James died of a heart attack, but I've always suspected it was heartbreak that really killed him. 2 years before he died, Catherine had told him she was ashamed to tell people what her father did for a living, that she'd lied to her colleagues at the financial advisory firm. Told them he was a contractor, as if that was somehow better than admitting he was a carpenter. James never recovered from that. The man who'd taught Catherine to ride a bike, who'd paid for her private school education, who'd worked double shifts so she could have piano lessons and summer camps, that man died a little that day. His actual death just made it official. Catherine had always been distant, but after James died, she circled closer. Weekly visits that felt more like inspections than family time. questions about my properties, my investments, my will. Richard would walk through my house with assessing eyes, pointing out repairs that needed to be done, offering to take care of things for me. "You're 68, Margaret," he'd say, with that condescending smile. "You shouldn't be dealing with contractors and maintenance issues. Let me handle it." I'd refused at first, but they were persistent. Last spring, when I'd mentioned a small roof leak, they'd insisted on doing a complete home inspection. Richard had spent weeks in my attic, my basement, making sure everything was up to code. I'd been grateful then. What a fool I'd been. Emma was different. Emma had always been different. She was my youngest grandchild, the surprise baby Catherine had at 41 and never seemed to want. While her older brother followed Catherine into finance, Emma had gravitated toward her grandfather. She'd spent hours in his workshop, learning to use tools, to measure twice and cut once, to take pride in work done with her own hands. When Emma announced at 18 that she was skipping college to become a carpenter, Catherine had been "You're throwing your life away? After everything we've given you." "You mean after everything Grandpa paid for?" Emma had shot back. "Don't worry, Mom. I won't embarrass you by telling people what I do. I know how much that matters to you." Catherine had cut her off that day. No more college fund, no more family dinners, no more acknowledgement at all. Emma had moved into my garage apartment, worked her apprenticeship, and became one of the most sought-after Finnish carpenters in the city. She was exactly like James, proud, skilled, and honest to her core. Before we continue, please leave a comment telling us where you're watching from and subscribe to Never Too Old channel. We're creating a community of people who know that our best chapters can happen at any age. Now, back to the story. The ER doctor was a woman in her 50s named Dr. Patricia Walsh, and she didn't waste time with pleasantries. After hearing Emma's story and examining me, she ordered a comprehensive toxicology panel. "Mrs. Chen, I'm going to be direct with you. Your symptoms: chronic fatigue, nausea, cognitive fog. The tremors in your hands, these could indicate heavy metal poisoning or exposure to certain industrial chemicals. How long have you been experiencing these?" 6 months, maybe 7. I thought I was just getting old. Dr. Walsh's expression hardened. "That's what someone would want you to think." She turned to Emma. "You said you found equipment in her attic with biohazard warnings." "Yes, I took pictures before we left." Emma pulled out her phone, showing the doctor images of a sophisticated filtration system, tubes running into the water main, and a large tank with orange and red warning stickers. Dr. Walsh studied the photos, her face growing grimmer. "This is beyond my expertise, but I'm calling the police right now. This isn't a medical issue anymore. This is attempted murder." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Attempted murder. My own daughter. The detective who arrived was a man named Robert Morrison, mid-40s, with kind eyes that turned hard when Emma showed him the photographs. "Mrs. Chen, I need you to understand something. If what your granddaughter found is what we think it is, you're extremely lucky to be alive. I'm sending a forensic team to your house immediately. You're not going back there until we've cleared it completely." "How long will that take?" "However long it takes. In cases like this, we don't rush." He looked at Emma with something like respect. "You may have saved your grandmother's life today, young lady." That took courage. Emma's eyes filled with tears for the first time. "She's all I have left. My real family." Anyway, Detective Morrison took our statements. Everything we could remember about Richard's work on the house, Catherine's increased visits, the timeline of my symptoms. He was thorough, professional, and when Catherine called my phone again, he was the one who answered. "Mrs. Chen is unable to come to the phone right now. This is Detective Morrison with the city police. I need you and your husband to come to the station for questioning." I couldn't hear Catherine's response, but I could imagine her shock. Her outrage. "Ma'am, we have evidence of a serious crime. You can come voluntarily or we can send officers to collect you. Your choice." He hung up and looked at me with sympathy. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Chen. I know this is your daughter. But if what we suspect is true, she and her husband have been systematically poisoning you for months." The lawyer arrived 2 hours later. Patricia Hawthorne, recommended by Dr. Walsh, was a specialist in elder abuse cases. She was 60 herself, sharp as a razor, with silver hair cut in a precise bob and eyes that missed nothing. "Margaret, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've seen children steal from their parents, neglect them, manipulate them. But what your granddaughter is describing, this level of premeditation, this sophistication, this is among the most calculated attempts I've encountered. She laid out a legal pad and began taking notes as Emma and I told her everything. Catherine's increasing interest in my finances. Richard's insistence on doing home repairs. The months of declining health I'd attributed to age and grief. Here's what we're going to do, Patricia said. First, we wait for the forensic results from your house. That's our evidence. Second, we get your medical records showing the timeline of your symptoms. Third, we get your financial records, every document Catherine or Richard has asked about, every conversation about your will or your properties. Fourth, I'm filing for an emergency restraining order against both of them. They don't get within 500 feet of you. Can she do that? I asked Detective Morrison. Given the circumstances. Absolutely. And I'll support the petition. Over the next 3 days, the case built itself with horrifying clarity. The forensic team found exactly what Emma had photographed. A bypass system that had been routing my water supply through a reservoir tank. The tank contained a mixture of heavy metals, lead, arsenic, and cadmium in concentrations that would cause chronic poisoning without immediate death. Whoever designed this knew what they were doing, the forensic chemist explained to us. This wasn't meant to kill you quickly. It was meant to make you gradually sicker, more confused, more dependent. Building a case for incompetence, so they could get power of attorney, Patricia said grimly. Once they had that, they could control everything. Your properties, your assets, your medical care. My blood tests confirmed elevated levels of all 3 heavy metals. Dr. Walsh had started chelation therapy immediately, but she warned me the effects might be permanent. You're going to recover, Margaret, but you'll need ongoing treatment. The cognitive effects, the fatigue, some of that may never fully resolve. Someone stole months of your life. Maybe years. Detective Morrison brought more evidence. Richard's credit card records showed purchases of industrial chemicals and filtration equipment over the past 18 months. His Google search history recovered through a warrant was damning. How long does heavy metal poisoning take? Symptoms of dementia versus poisoning, legal competence assessment criteria. How to get emergency power of attorney. But the most devastating evidence came from Emma's deeper investigation of the attic, behind the insulation where she'd found the reservoir. She discovered something else, a notebook in Richard's handwriting, documenting the installation process, the chemical mixtures, and the expected timeline of my deterioration. February 15th, initial installation complete. Started low dose to avoid suspicion. April 3rd, Margaret complaining of fatigue. Good progress. Increasing concentration. June 22nd, clear cognitive decline. She asked me the same question twice today. Catherine noticed and played concerned. Perfect. August 10th, tremors starting. She dropped a glass yesterday. Might be able to move for competency assessment within 8 to 10 weeks. It was all there. Every calculated step. Every deliberate poisoning. Every false expression of concern. My daughter and her husband had been systematically destroying me, documenting my decline like a science experiment. Emma found one more thing in that attic, tucked behind the notebook. A folder containing documents about Richard's mother, who had died 2 years ago of complications from dementia. There were medical records showing similar symptoms to mine. Fatigue, confusion, cognitive decline, and a copy of Richard's mother's will, leaving everything to him after she was declared incompetent. He's done this before, Detective Morrison said quietly. We're opening an investigation into his mother's death. Patricia had been building our case meticulously, but Catherine and Richard forced our hand. 3 days after the discovery, they showed up at the hotel with their own lawyer, demanding to see me. The hotel manager called my room. Mrs. Chen, there's a situation in the lobby. Your daughter is here with her attorney, threatening to call Adult Protective Services. She's claiming you're being held against your will. Patricia was with me when the call came. She smiled, a cold expression that had nothing to do with warmth. Perfect. Let's go talk to them. Detective Morrison, are you available? He'd been anticipating this moment. We went down to the lobby with Emma beside me, Patricia on my other side, and Detective Morrison following. Catherine and Richard were there with a lawyer. I recognized Tom Fletcher, a man who'd built his reputation defending white-collar criminals. Catherine's face flooded with relief when she saw me. It looked genuine. Maybe part of it was. Mom, thank God. We've been so worried. Emma called us with this insane story about the water system, and then you disappeared. Stop, I said quietly. The word came out stronger than I felt. Just stop, Catherine. Her face shifted, confusion replacing concern. Mom, what's wrong? Did Emma tell you something? She's been unstable lately, you know that. She's jealous of what Richard and I have built. Jealous? Emma's voice was sharp enough to cut. I'm jealous that you've been poisoning my grandmother for months. Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted for my life. Richard stepped forward, his expression carefully neutral. Mrs. Chen, I think there's been a misunderstanding. The work I did on your house was routine maintenance. If there's something wrong with your water system, it's possible there was contamination I didn't catch. But to suggest I deliberately, we have your notebook, Detective Morrison said calmly. The one hidden in the attic. The one where you documented every stage of poisoning Margaret, including the expected timeline for her incompetence. The color drained from Richard's face. Just for a moment, the mask slipped, and I saw the calculation behind it. Then he recovered. I don't know what you're talking about. Someone must have planted your handwriting, Patricia interrupted. Your fingerprints on every page. Your search history showing research into heavy metal poisoning. Your credit card records for the equipment. And, most interestingly, the investigation we've opened into your mother's death 2 years ago, where she showed identical symptoms before you inherited her estate. Richard's lawyer put a hand on his arm, but Richard shook him off. His expression was changing. The concerned son-in-law evaporating, replaced by something cold and angry. You have no idea what it's like, he said, his voice low and harsh. Watching someone sit on millions of dollars while you're drowning in debt. She's 68 years old. She's lived her life. Meanwhile, Catherine and I are struggling with a mortgage. With her brother bleeding us dry with his failures, with debt from my mother's medical care. Richard, shut up, his lawyer hissed. Don't say another word. But Richard was beyond listening. 3 days of pressure, of fear, of his perfect plan collapsing, it all came pouring out. We deserved that money. Catherine is her daughter. That wealth should have been ours already. Instead, the old woman keeps working, keeps collecting rent, keeps hoarding everything while we suffer. Catherine was staring at her husband in horror. Richard, stop. Please stop talking. Why, it's over anyway. He turned to me, and the venom in his eyes was breathtaking. You know what the best part was? You thanked me. Every time I went into that attic to adjust the concentration, every time I checked the tank levels, you'd make me tea and thank me for taking care of you. You were so grateful to have family who cared. Detective Morrison already had his handcuffs out. Richard Morrison, you're under arrest for attempted murder, elder abuse, and conspiracy to commit fraud. You have the right to remain silent. Which I strongly suggest you exercise now. As the detective read Richard his rights, Catherine crumpled. She actually collapsed onto a lobby chair, her face in her hands. I didn't know, she whispered. Mom, please. I didn't know it would go this far. Richard said we were just going to document your confusion, get power of attorney to protect you. You knew, I said quietly. Every eye in the lobby turned to me. You knew, Catherine. You played concerned every time I showed symptoms. You suggested I might need help managing my affairs. You told me my memory lapses were getting worse. You were building the case for incompetence right alongside him. But I didn't know about the poisoning. I swear. Detective Morrison pulled out his phone, playing an audio file. Catherine's voice came through clearly. How much longer, do you think? Mom seems really out of it lately. Richard's voice answered. Another month, maybe 6 weeks. We need the symptoms severe enough that a doctor will agree she needs supervision. Catherine, and you're sure this can't be traced back to us? Richard, I'm sure. Even if someone tests her, they'll think it's environmental exposure. Old house, old pipes. Natural causes. The recording stopped. Catherine's face was gray. I didn't know what he was doing. I thought it was just, I don't know, stress making her sick. I didn't ask questions. You didn't want to know, Emma said, her voice thick with disgust. You wanted the money and you didn't care how you got it. You killed Grandpa with your cruelty, and you were killing Grandma the same way. Slowly, deliberately. Detective Morrison arrested Catherine too. She didn't fight it, didn't even cry. She just looked at me once, something like pleading in her eyes, and I looked away. I had nothing left to give her. As they were led away in handcuffs, Richard turned back. This isn't over. You have no proof I installed that system. Anyone could have done it. You'll never prove. Actually, Emma said clearly, I recorded you. 6 weeks ago, when I came to visit Grandma. You were in the attic. I heard you talking on the phone about adjusting the concentration. I recorded the whole conversation. I didn't know what it meant then, but I kept the file. Richard's face went from red to white. The mask shattered completely. "You little..." "That's enough," Detective Morrison said, steering him toward the door. "We'll add tampering with evidence and conspiracy to the charges." The legal process moved faster than I expected, probably because the evidence was overwhelming and Richard's lawyer convinced him that a plea deal was his only option. But both he and Catherine refused at first, convinced they could fight the charges. The preliminary hearing was brutal. Patricia presented evidence methodically: the installation equipment purchased on Richard's credit card, his search history, the notebook documenting my poisoning, the audio recordings, my medical records showing toxic heavy metal levels, and the forensic reports from my house. Then came Emma's testimony. My granddaughter sat in that witness box with her grandfather's steady courage and told the court everything. How she'd found the equipment. How she'd recorded Richard in the attic weeks before. How she'd watched me decline over months and suspected something was wrong but couldn't prove it. How she'd finally gone into the attic to investigate the leak I'd mentioned and found proof of the conspiracy. "My grandmother is the strongest person I know," Emma said, her voice clear and firm. "She built a business from nothing. She raised a family. She survived my grandfather's death. And my mother and her husband tried to destroy her for money. They didn't just try to kill her body, they tried to kill her mind, her dignity, her sense of self. They wanted her to think she was losing her memory, becoming incompetent, so they could take everything she'd worked for." The judge, a woman named Sarah Martinez, who was maybe 60 herself, watched Emma with something like fierce approval. When Patricia presented evidence that Richard had done the same thing to his mother, Judge Martinez's expression hardened. "This court has seen many cases of elder abuse," she said during the hearing. "Financial exploitation, neglect, manipulation, but this level of premeditation, this systematic, calculated destruction of a human being, this is among the most disturbing cases I've encountered in 20 years on the bench." Richard's lawyer tried to argue that the evidence was circumstantial, that Richard's notebook was just research for a novel, that the equipment could have been installed by anyone. The arguments fell flat, especially after the forensic handwriting expert confirmed the notebook was Richard's. And the digital forensics team recovered deleted files from his computer showing detailed plans for obtaining my power of attorney and liquidating my properties. Catherine's lawyer tried a different approach: the devoted daughter manipulated by her controlling husband. She hadn't known about the poisoning, only the incompetent scheme. She'd been under Richard's influence, trapped in an abusive marriage, fearful of what he might do if she didn't comply. Patricia demolished that defense in one cross-examination. "Mrs. Morrison, you're a financial advisor. You understand legal documents, power of attorney, fiduciary responsibility. Are you seriously claiming you thought it was ethical to obtain power of attorney over your mother through manufactured evidence of incompetence?" Catherine had no answer. The private investigator Patricia hired found even more damaging evidence. Richard's mother had revised her will just 3 months before her death, leaving everything to Richard. The witnesses who'd signed the will were Richard's colleagues. The doctor who'd declared her incompetent had been a friend of Richard's from college. And her symptoms documented in medical records were identical to mine. Heavy metal toxicity that had been attributed to environmental exposure from her old house. "They exhumed her body," Detective Morrison told me quietly. "With the family's permission, toxicology tests confirmed heavy metal poisoning consistent with deliberate exposure. They're filing charges for her murder." In the end, Richard and Catherine both took plea deals. Richard pled guilty to attempted murder, elder abuse, conspiracy to commit fraud, and voluntary manslaughter in his mother's death. Catherine pled guilty to conspiracy to commit elder abuse and conspiracy to commit fraud. The sentencing hearing was packed. Emma sat beside me, holding my hand. Patricia sat on my other side, her presence a shield. On the other side of the courtroom, Richard and Catherine sat in orange jumpsuits, looking smaller somehow, diminished. Judge Martinez didn't waste words. "Mr. Morrison, you have proven yourself to be a calculating predator who views vulnerable people as resources to be exploited. You murdered your mother for inheritance. You attempted to murder your mother-in-law for her assets. You showed no remorse until you were caught. And even then, your only concern was avoiding consequences. This court sentences you to 15 years for attempted murder, 10 years for voluntary manslaughter, to run consecutively. You will serve 25 years in prison." Richard didn't react. He just stared straight ahead, his face blank. "Mrs. Morrison," the judge continued, turning to Catherine. "You are your mother's daughter. You benefited from her generosity your entire life. And you repaid her by conspiring to destroy her mind and steal her life's work. The fact that you may not have known the full extent of your husband's poisoning doesn't absolve you. You knew the scheme was wrong. You participated willingly. You betrayed your mother in the deepest possible way. This court sentences you to 12 years in prison. Catherine's face crumpled. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I said nothing. There was nothing left to say. The civil consequences came next. Patricia filed a lawsuit for pain and suffering, medical expenses, and emotional distress. Richard and Catherine's assets, their house, their cars, their retirement accounts were seized. They declared bankruptcy, but it didn't matter. The judgment was for $850,000, and it would follow them for the rest of their lives. Their professional licenses were revoked. Catherine could never work as a financial advisor again. Richard's engineering license was permanently stripped. Even after prison, they'd be unemployable in their fields. Their names forever linked to attempted murder and elder abuse. The restraining orders were permanent. Neither of them could contact me, come near me, or attempt any communication for the rest of their lives. If they did, they'd go back to prison immediately. Emma got a different kind of justice. I'd been planning to leave my estate to Catherine and her brother, divided equally. After everything that happened, I revised my will. Everything, all 17 properties, all the investments, all the cash would go to Emma when I died. But more than that, I made her a full partner in my business immediately. I don't want to wait until I'm gone to see you thrive, I told her. Let's build this together. Let's honor your grandfather's memory by showing that honest work, integrity, and loyalty matter more than greed. Emma cried when I told her. Not tears of joy, tears of grief, for what our family could have been. I wish Mom had been different, she whispered. I wish she'd valued the things that mattered. So do I, sweetheart. So do I. 2 years later, I'm standing in the office of Chen & Chen Property Management, looking at the new sign Emma designed. My health has mostly recovered, the chelation therapy worked, though I still have moments of fatigue that remind me of what was done to me. My mind is sharp again, sharper than it's been in years. Turns out I wasn't developing dementia. I was being poisoned by my own daughter. Emma has transformed our business. She's brought in sustainable renovation practices, specializing in historic properties that need careful restoration. She's hired young people from trade schools, offering apprenticeships like the one she had. Our properties are in higher demand than ever, and we've expanded to 23 buildings. My grandson, Catherine's son, Emma's older brother, reached out 6 months ago. He'd had no idea what his parents were planning. When he found out, he testified against them, provided financial records showing their debt, and cut them out of his life completely. He's building a relationship with Emma now, slowly and carefully. Some family can be saved. I think about James every day. He'd be proud of Emma. I know that. She has his hands, his work ethic, his unshakable integrity. Sometimes I catch her standing the way he used to, head tilted slightly when she's examining a piece of carpentry. And my heart aches with how much I miss him. Catherine writes me letters from prison. I don't read them. Patricia receives them, documents them for the record, and stores them away. Maybe someday I'll be ready to know what she has to say, maybe not. Either way is okay. Richard doesn't write. He's in a maximum security facility 3 states away, serving his 25 years. He'll be 70 when he gets out, if he lives that long. His mother's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit and won. He'll never be free of the debt, the judgment, the consequences. Sometimes people ask me if I feel vindicated. If justice has healed the wound. The truth is more complicated. I got justice, real, meaningful consequences for the people who tried to destroy me, but I also lost my daughter. I lost the family I thought I had. I lost the innocence of believing my child loved me more than she loved money. What I gained is different. I gained absolute clarity about what matters. I gained a deeper relationship with Emma, who proved that loyalty and courage aren't just words. I gained the knowledge that I'm stronger than I knew, that even at 68, even while being poisoned, even facing betrayal from my own child, I survived. I fought back. I won. The business is thriving. Emma and I work side by side every day, visiting properties, meeting tenants, planning renovations. We've started a scholarship fund in James's name for young people entering the trades. We're building something that matters, something that honors the values he taught us. I'm 70 now. I have good years ahead of me, years that Catherine and Richard tried to steal. I'm not wasting them on anger or grief. I'm spending them with Emma, with the new family we're building, with the work that James and I started 4 decades ago. Catherine will be 61 when she's released from prison. Richard will be 70. They'll have lost everything: their careers, their reputations, their family, their freedom. The daughter, who was ashamed of her father's blue-collar work, will have a prison record. The engineer, who thought he was smarter than everyone, will be a convicted murderer. And me. I'll be building things with my granddaughter. Teaching her everything I know about business, about property, about resilience. Watching her become the woman her grandfather always knew she could be. That's not just justice. That's legacy. So, that's my story. I'd love to hear what you think. Have you ever had to cut a family member out of your life for your own protection? How did you find the strength to choose yourself? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more stories like mine.